is KTN News.
One of the most important things now is how to prepare for the COVID. And the protocols that we've been given are very, very clear. So they involve everything. The whole process from the minute you arrive at the entrance of the hotel, or even being picked from the airport, and the way you progress until you reach the hotel. So a long time ago, for example, we would want to come to your room as many times as possible. The new protocol is once we clean up a room, we seal it. And we agree with you how often you want us to come into your room. You are the one who will break the seal to go into your room. Long time ago, we were into buffets. So we would have a big spread of food, and then you go and serve yourself. The new protocols are now requiring that when you come in, it is either a plated meal experience or a served meal experience.
Well, one of the officials in Mombasa sometime this week talking about the new protocols. I want us to quickly take a look at some questions that we are getting from our social media pages before we get back to our guests. Andrew Nganga says, okay, let's take a look at what we have here. Joe Mwange says, hoteliers will have to forfeit the huge profits brought by foreign tourists to survive and cater for the local market. Hotels will need to reduce their base price and review their goods suppliers to cater for the local market. We've applied for the funds from TFC and they have not yet started funding hotels. When will they start? I think we can have the PS rather. Respond to that. And the same person goes that this is a question to Mr. Hersi. When will TFC release the funds since they keep saying the mandatory requirements list is not ready? A question to Mr. Hersi. Hope you've been able to get that. And he also says, will foreign tourists be quarantined for 14 days? If so, even our neighbors will not want to come in. Our PS will be telling us more about some of these plans when we're talking about reopening. Anonymous says hotel owners need to take advantage of hotel consultants for re-innovation like Profitable Hospitality Kenya. And he also says, will foreign tourists be quarantined for 14 days? Another question there, similar to Joe Mwange's to the PS. What is the government doing to ensure the survival of SME players in the tourism sector, especially tour operators and travel agents? This is an interesting question that both the PS and Mr. Hersi can respond to as well. Especially on the tour operators and travel agents. Let's take a look at what we have on Twitter, if we have any questions so that they can respond to them. Same question from Joe Mwange that we've seen on Slido on whether foreign tourists will be quarantined for 14 days. We'll be asking that shortly. We also have a question from Alfred Mwalili who asks, is it obvious, it is obvious rather, that domestic tourism will play a key role in our recovery. But how do the hotels justify the seasonality rates for domestic travelers and obvious high rates compared to other markets such as South Africa? I'll have David Gashuru respond to this, being an industry player, that how do hotels justify the seasonality rates for domestic travelers and obvious high rates compared to other markets such as South Africa. Let's get back to our panelists. PS Kwekwe, a lot of questions, most of them around reopening and whether foreign tourists will be quarantined. In the report that was released yesterday, we are talking about a recovery pathway. Talk to us about what, just give us the highlights of what do we expect in this recovery plan that has been given in that report by that particular committee.
Thank you. Our recovery pathway is four-pronged. One is, of course, what we've been discussing at length, that investing and capitalizing on domestic tourism. So that means re-engineering our itineraries, putting in place discounted pricing for domestic clients. Of course, working on issues of connectivity, both by road, by road, air, and also by rail. And of course, we whether it's domestic or international, the issues of building the confidence of the traveler, that they're going to be safe from the airport when they enter, or from wherever they come into the country, whether through by a land and a border post by road or by air, they will be safe. So that in totality is a bottom line for everybody, even domestic travelers, that they want to be assured of their safety. And therefore, the protocols that we have been working on, and tomorrow, God willing, we shall be able to unveil, will be primarily looking at how we can be able to ensure the safety of our clients, be they domestic, be they international, and the workers or the people who come into contact with them as they enjoy the experiences of Kenya. But looking at the other pathway, the recovery pathway that we are looking at closely is on the issues of product diversification and packaging. Of course, looking at a domestic tourist, they may not really, when they go to Mombasa, they will not want to lie on a sandbed for 6 hours, for example. That means, therefore, we have to repackage our products and our itineraries to ensure that this client, who is a domestic client, can get the value for their money. So when they go for either for safari or the big destination or for adventure or for whatever it is they're going out there, the pricing and the experience must match. That they feel that they have paid value for, they have earned value for their money, but also they have enjoyed that experience. Looking at the third one is digitalizing tourism. Of course, this COVID-19 has taught us many lessons. One of them being that things can be done virtually. People can still experience can have tourism experiences virtually. But of course, that cannot replace the physical, experience. It's more thrilling to have a physical experience. But we want to use, a technology to keep people connected to the destination, to have people's appetites always reminded that destination Kenya awaits them. The question that I've been asked, for example, on when do we expect to disburse this financing to establishments, particularly the refurbishment fund. This is a fund that starts tomorrow because our financial year starts tomorrow, and we anticipate by August we should be able to start rolling out this program, because this is money that we expect to come from the exchequer and then we lend it out. On matters of quarantine, our protocols are very categorical that any traveler who comes from outside the borders should have a certificate of a COVID-free certificate. This they earn from their own, from the country of origin. And therefore, when they come here, they are safe enough to stay and experience Kenya for as long as they are here. And in the event that probably they develop COVID-19, because of course you don't contract it today and exhibit symptoms today, in the event that then they get sick, again, one of the things that we are working on is to ensure that the response mechanisms are very they're reliable for them to be able to get a good treatment. On the matters of SMEs, what are we doing? If our listeners have been following, is that there has been the establishment of a SME credit scheme. This is a guarantee scheme for SMEs only. It's a 3 billion SME guarantee scheme. For all SMEs. So it's a competitive scheme, because all SMEs from manufacturing to tourism to any sector of the economy, they can compete for this.
Okay,
but
thank
also
you.
we have, there's a fund, yeah.
All right, I'm sorry to cut you short. We don't have too much time, so I hope we'll get time to get back to you. There's a question here that I would really like Mr. Mohamed Hersi to respond to. Nahashon Adero is asking, has horizontal integration, which is common in hotel chains, helped to pacify the impacts of COVID-19 on hotel business? What are the key prospects for post-COVID-19 resilience? Even as you give us, respond to that, giving us your closing remarks, and maybe what would be the way forward for this industry?
Thank you very much once again. And as we come to the end of the program, what I'd like to say is that we are now ready to start receiving clients. And the key thing is about recovery. And the main thing is about the quarantine. And when we were drawing when we were sitting down to draw some of these the protocols, we initially came up with the idea that, look here, you come in here, you get quarantined for 14 days, because the whole world was doing that way. But anybody going on holiday, you're looking at between 7 days and 14 days at most, international traveler. So you're basically telling the client that, look here, you come to Kenya on holiday, you actually spend that time in a quarantine. So that has changed. And as long as you get the certificate, which is less than 14 days, then it means you hit the road and start, having your fun. But of course, within reason, and you continue practicing social distancing, everything that we do. When it comes to the strategies that have been put in place, costing is one key thing, and we need to be competitive so that we're able to attract our own domestic travelers. Keep in mind that our domestic traveler is also looking at the competition. I'll again remember over 130 countries. When it comes to beach holidays alone, we are competing with 42 other countries, all the way from Sri Lanka to the Caribbean. So we are not alone. And next to Zanzibar, of course. So we need to make sure that we are prepared, and we entice and we reach out, to our own and, of course, the region. And one of the critical things we're going to use, of course, is digital, going social media and everything. People wonder that why are we not advertising on CNN and all those places. We'll be reaching out to our domestic market, where they spend most of their time, which is social media.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we are prepared.
Thank you. We are prepared. Good one to end with. Thank you. Mike Macharia, speak to us about where do we go from here? What's the way forward? Earlier on, you spoke about strategies in the region, internationally, but let's bring it back home. What do we need to do to survive, even as you give us your closing remarks?
Let me start with the closing remarks, Akisa. First of all, we want to debunk the myth that hotels make super profits. 35% of our revenue goes to pay salaries. Those salaries, 10% of the revenues are paid to staff as a sharing scheme under the service charge scheme. About 25 to 30% of our revenues goes to pay suppliers in the supply chain. That's your supply of meat, mboga, electricity, power, maintenance, fuel, insurance, and so on and so forth. Then you still have the taxman. So we don't make super profits. Now, coming to the way forward. The way forward, the best thing to do is to get a roadmap. Let's start with a roadmap. As you saw, the report yesterday recommended with a 4-step strategy, where you start with the community, then domestic, then regional, then international. It doesn't have to follow the 4 steps. It can follow the 4 steps from a marketing point of view. But if you say you're opening up the airspace, like now I'll give you an example. If we say that we are not ready for international tourists until November, that's a lie, because we already had people who wanted to book for August, and they were waiting for us to open. So when we did not open up, they told us we'll have to cancel for now, move the bookings to another destination, and then come back to you later. So the opening up of tourism should not be structured in a step-by-step way. It should be structured as access is allowed, and then after that, once when we have the access, then we can market. One final one, Akisa, on the importance of Kenya Airways in this whole scenario, is that we have our own airline. Mm-hmm. It's very strategic. We need to use that airline where we have demand and no capacity for flights. We can use Kenya Airways to bring people in.
Right.
And then obviously internally we have the local airlines. Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot, Wakisa.
Thank you very much. Let's get the closing remarks from David Gashuru, the GM, Sarova Pan-Africa. There was a question on whether you can justify seasonal rates and high rates, especially for locals. You might respond to that even as you give us your closing remarks. So.
Thank you. I'll start with that question first. Mm-hmm. From start, let's understand that we are in an international market. We are not in a domestic market only. We are in an international market. So our pricing is based on best practices globally. So when we give a rate in dollars or in another currency, the equivalent of that is what we apply for the local tourism. In fact, it is even easier for the local tourists because they may have concessions here and they have the advantage of negotiating, internally. But our prices are global and we apply the same to all the customers who come. Obviously, because of the times we are in, we are trying to adjust to see that the local tourists are able to come. And the backdrop of that is that we have huge costs, as Mike has already explained. I don't need to go back to that. And we don't even make profits. The intention now is not to make super profits or any kind of profits. It's to survive. And having in mind our domestic tourists as the ones to make us continue surviving. My final remarks would be, let us not look at the industry as going to come out of COVID challenges as the only one. No, before we had our weaknesses, and definitely we had very big strengths. We must, first of all, deal with the weaknesses that existed before, and those are the pain areas of tourism. What are they? The government needs to look at that.
Right.
And
Thank you very much.
We also look at this industry. The industry is if you look at the big picture, one guest comes and is able to stay around because of the money they pay to any individual that is coming around.
Right.
The multiplier effect of tourism is huge.
Okay,
it touches on almost every sector.
Thank you very much. We have like 2 minutes left, and I'd really like the PS to give us her closing remarks as we end the show.
Thank you. For me, my closing remark is that recovery of tourism is synonym, will stimulate recovery of other sectors, manufacturing, agriculture, transport. The moment tourism is on its feet, all these other sectors will benefit from that. So it is to our own advantage that we work to bounce back and resuscitate our tourism industry, because by so doing, we also stimulate the other sectors of the economy.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presence, and all our panelists, Safina Kwekwe Tsungu, Principal Secretary, Tourism, Mohamed Hersi, Chairman, Kenya Tourism Federation, Mike Mesharia, CEO, Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers, as well as David Gashuru, General Manager, Sarova Panafric. Thank you for weighing in on this all-important conversation for one of the hardest hit industries or sectors in the country. A lot of ideas given on how we can move forward. So time will tell whether we'll be able to survive and ensure that we wade through even the after effects of this pandemic. My name is Akisa Wandera. You're watching The Front Row. I'll be seeing you again on Tuesday, same time, same place.